While putting this case together, I have taken a few breaks away from it. It is rather heavy. It involves details of extreme abuse of a small child, and although there are no graphic photos, it is disturbing. So with that being said, let's get on with it. In January of 2008, Jessica Carson was in high school when she met Blaine Milam. The two quickly became engaged, and Carson, along with her baby, 13-month-old Amora Bain Carson, moved into Milam's apartment in Longview, Texas. By all accounts, Milam loved Amora. In spring of 2008, Milam and Carson bought a Ouija board while living in their Longview apartment, as Carson wanted to communicate with her deceased father, who died from suicide when she was 10, and she was the one that discovered his body. Carson would claim that she received answers from her father, things only he would know. The two spent hours doing this until eventually Carson felt that Milam was possessed by the devil and that the apartment was also possessed. They quickly moved into Milam's mother's house in Tatum, Texas, a small town located in Rusk County with a population of 1,385 people as of the 2010 census. The landlord of this apartment stated that the two left the apartment trashed. There was food left in the refrigerator, and she found a light bulb full of amphetamines along with a knife in the toilet tank. Friends and relatives described Carson's behavior changing around this time. The once outgoing girl was now withdrawn and stopped caring about her appearance. They were concerned that something profound was going on in her life and were worried about her and Amora. Milam's father died in September of that year from a stroke. He and his father were close, and he had been homeschooled from the 4th grade on, primarily by his father. The two would watch cartoons together, and Milam had aspirations to be a rock star. Milam has been described as passive by some and having control issues and a short fuse by others. An incident was described by a friend of Carson's where she witnessed an argument between the two. Milam had a gun and threatened suicide and tried to leave in Carson's car. When Carson got into the car with him, he shot a hole in the floorboard. Just prior to meeting Carson, Milam was charged with aggravated sexual assault on an 11-year-old girl. Some sources say she was 13, and some say there was more than one victim. He had broken into the girl's home and left pornographic images in her dresser drawer, along with suggestive messages about what the two could do together. Although he never touched her, he was placed on the sex offender registry and ordered to spend 180 days in jail beginning in August of 2008. He was let out on a work release 48 days into the sentence and never went back. Due to errors by officials, Milam was never arrested again and returned to jail to fulfill his sentence. One of the probation terms was that he was not to be within 200 feet of a premises where children gather, which means he should not have been living with a child, and Carson knew this, as she attended a hearing with him that outlined all of this. Once the two moved from Longview to Tatum, Milam never updated this information, and the authorities lost track of him. He had lived in Longview for such a short time that it was not reasonable to think that he had already moved from that address, so no check was ever done on him. The two continued to believe that Milam was possessed, and now also believed that Amora was too. The two felt that the only way to rid her of this demon was to perform an exorcism. The following is Carson's account of how this crime began to play out.
It was in September. Blaine's dad died in September, early September, and right after he died, we bought an Ouija board.
Okay.
And we didn't know they were bad and it was an omen or anything like that. Like, we're very strong believers of God and everything. And we bought an Ouija board, and then, you know, we heard that it worked, but we never actually did believe people when they said it had worked, so we wanted to try it out for ourselves. And then, you know, my dad's dead too. He died when I was 10.
I'm sorry.
And, you know, so I asked my daddy that I thought, you know, a question that he would know that nobody else would know. And I had never told Blaine that. And so when he spelled it out and everything, I was like, you know, this is my daddy. And so we did that, and, you know, like, this is like a telephone to heaven, and we thought it was really cool and everything. So we kept talking to our dads, telling them how much we missed them. And, you know, and we talked to him for about 8 hours straight that night. And we started getting really freaked. And we got this little music box from one of his friends that's Chinese, and it has these Chinese people singing, you know, God will protect us, demons leave this house, because they said our apartment was possessed because weird stuff started happening and everything. So we left, and we kept that music box there and blessed it, and then we blessed the Ouija board, and then we threw it away. And you know, kind of like The Exorcist, you know, have you ever seen, you know, when demons come into people or whatever. And the devil had came into Blaine. And, you know, I mean, it sounds crazy, but I mean, I would not be making this stuff up.
I'm a Christian. I believe in demon possession.
Yeah, and I am too. And, you know, I kind of knew, I knew about demon possession, but, you know, you can't really believe something for sure until you see it with your own eyes. And so when the devil started coming in me, talking to me, saying, you know, I'm gonna take Blaine's soul tonight, you know, all this kind of stuff, it started really freaking me out. And, you know, now it's gotten into Amora now. And then I said, okay, well, can't we, like, have an exorcism or something to get rid of it? But Blaine came back outside, and I said, what did you run in the house saying Amora for? He said, God told me she got that hammer and was hitting herself in the head, and those marks on her head was, I think, from that hammer where she was hitting herself, or that demon was hitting herself on the head. I was like, you know, there's got to be something else we can do. I was like, we can get money, we can go to a minister and see if he can help, or go to find a priest somewhere and see if, you know, we can make payments on them doing exorcism or something. See if we can do just anything. There's got to be another way. And he said, God said it was too late. And I was like, what do you mean God said it was too late? And then he was crying while he was saying this and everything. He was like, because if she doesn't go to heaven now, she will live her life with Satan having her soul, you know.
On December 2nd, 2008, still believing Amora was possessed, Carson and Milam were fueled by amphetamines and used a hammer to beat it out of her. Sometime afterwards, the scene was staged to look like someone else had done it by planting fake blood throughout the home. Milam and Carson then drove to a pawn shop and sold some tools for money in order to, in what some sources say, buy the services of someone that could provide an exorcism. Others say it was to get cash to get away. What they ended up doing was buying cigarettes at a gas station. Meanwhile, Amora was left at the residence to die in a hole in the floor of a bathroom. At 10:37 a.m., Milam called 911.
December 2, 2008, 16 hours, 48 minutes, 15 seconds.
Rescue 911.
Yes. My name is Blaine Milam, and my daughter, I just found her dead.
How old's your daughter?
13 months.
13 months old? Okay, let me connect you with the ambulance service, okay? Ma'am, we're going to try CPR anyway, okay?
16
Get her to the
hours,
phone now.
51 minutes, 26 seconds.
Dinner. Blaine, dinner, hurry.
Are you there?
Yes.
Y'all stalling is not helping her at all.
Go ahead.
If he's not going to do it, you could put the phone down and go get that baby and get her to the phone.
Once officers arrived, the story Carson and Milam told was that they went for a walk to look at a property they were planning on moving a trailer to. They were gone for an hour to an hour and a half, and when they returned, They found Amora in the hole, injured but alive. It would later be changed to say that Amora was dead when they arrived. Milam added that Amora had a blood ring around her mouth that looked like she had been biting the insulation. Officers described the couple as looking like grieving parents as they were embracing each other. The following is the account that Milam gave to officers.
I want to make sure that you understand I'm a Texas Ranger, okay? And I've got a tape recorder playing right now, but you're not under arrest. You understand that?
Yes,
I mean, you're sitting here in my car, and I'm talking because the tape can't see us. It can only hear us, okay?
Yes.
But you don't have handcuffs on. I asked you to come over here and just sit there, and we're just sitting and visiting. Is that right?
Right.
Now, what I want you to do, Blaine, is just in your own words, and I know this is hard, buddy, but I want you to just tell me what happened this morning.
I gave her a bottle. We were walking down to the property. We call it the property because that's where I'm having our new mobile home put.
Okay, you gave the baby a bottle?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in there on the bed.
All right, okay, go ahead. And you and Jess walked down to the property?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So we just started marking off the stuff, and about an hour flies by, and between that hour and a half, we walk down here, walk in the house.
Okay. Go
And
ahead.
she wasn't nowhere to be found. All right.
Okay, go ahead. I'm listening to you.
All right. And then by that time, we're searching for her, and there's a hole in my mama's bathroom.
Okay.
All right. That's where she was.
Afterward, he told the officers that they were welcome to search his home and gave them the names of possible suspects. William Brown, the DA investigator, describes his feelings about the scene of the crime.
Very strange. Very strange. You've got a small child lying dead on the floor, apparently a victim of some kind of brutality. I don't know a better word to describe it than just brutality. And you immediately, you ask yourself, well, what's happened here? What took place? What or who could do something like this to a baby?
Investigators obtained search warrants for the property. In it, they found blood splatter, bloody bedding, baby clothes, diapers and wipes, a tube of Astroglide lubricant, a pair of jeans with bloodstains on the lap. All items were tested positive for Amora's DNA. Milam's aunt had also called to report a conversation Milam had with his sister. He told her to find a way to get back into the home to get some evidence that was underneath it. The officers crawled underneath the home, and just to clarify, it was a mobile home, and discovered a pipe wrench in a plastic bag that had been shoved into the hole in the bathroom floor. Analysis would later reveal remnants of the Astroglide lubricant on the pipe wrench, Amora's diaper, as well as the wipes that were collected earlier from the home. One finding an investigator found of note when processing the couple's vehicle that there was no baby car seat in the car, but one was found face down in the driveway. Both Milam and Carson were indicted on capital murder, and they each pleaded not guilty. The trial for Milam began on May 3, 2010, after a change of venue due to the high publicity of the case. In the trial, the medical examiner gave Amora's cause of death as homicidal violence due to blunt force trauma and possible strangulation. Her injuries included facial abrasions and bruises to the extent that it looked like one big injury, 24 human bite marks, bruises, scrapes, and abrasions from head to toe, bleeding underneath the scalp, extensive fracturing to the back of the skull, a laceration to the brain, as well as swelling, bleeding around the optic nerves, and bleeding in the eyes and around the jugular vein, spiral fractures to the right arm and leg consistent with twisting, 18 rib fractures, a tear to the liver, and extensive injury to the genitals. The underside of her tongue was lacerated from blunt force trauma. He described her injuries as the worst he had ever seen. he was not able to say which injury ultimately caused her death. A forensic odontologist also testified to a reasonable degree of certainty that 8 of the bite marks were made by Milam and excluded Carson from all but 1 of the bite marks. A nurse from the Rusk County Jail where Milam was being housed testified that he called for her one day. When she arrived at his cell, he was crying. He handed her a note saying that he wanted to confess, that his dad had always taught him to be a man and he had been reading the Bible. He said he did it and to tell Jessica that he loved her. The defense case focused on Carson as the murderer. Witnesses testified to a change in her behavior around the time she received a settlement at the age of 18 from her father's estate. They described bizarre and paranoid behavior, and they were all concerned about her and Amora. A psychiatrist was called by the defense and stated that Carson's condition at the time of Amora's death was consistent with psychotic depression. His assessment was made with reading material about Carson, and he had never met with her. The defense called their own odontologist that studied 5 of the bite marks and could not exclude Milam or Carson. The jury deliberated for 8 hours and came back with a guilty verdict. During the penalty phase, the prosecutors brought up that Milam was on probation at the time of the crime for aggravated sexual assault of a child under the age of 14. Therefore, he was in violation of his probation terms just by being near Amora. A conversation between Milam and an officer where Milam admitted to several other assaults he had committed was also admitted into evidence. A fellow inmate testified that Milam told him about a plan he had to escape from jail and that he threatened to stab him with a pencil. Various other witnesses testified to his controlling behavior towards Carson. Milam's mother, Shirley, testified that her son suffered from emotional immaturity and of his meth use as contributing to his various issues. A toxicologist testified that Milam had 10 times the therapeutic dose of meth in his system at the time of the crime. This high amount can cause severe psychosis. Another expert testified as to Milam's mental deficiency, his emotional immaturity, and meth use as contributing factors also. It was also introduced that Milam was not read his Miranda rights when first interviewed. In the end, the jury voted for a penalty of death for Milam. Carson's trial began on April 8, 2011. The prosecutor opened by describing Carson as a woman who sacrificed her child to a monster. They didn't seek the death penalty in her case, but argued that she was more than just a bystander to the crime. Carson testified that Milam was controlling and abusive to her in the relationship. It also came out that the police had been called to their home on several occasions over allegations of domestic violence. The defense claimed that Carson was controlled by Milam and that she believed that Amora was possessed and looked to Milam for a solution, and he came up with the exorcism and carried it out. The prosecution closed by asking the jury why, if she really thought the baby had demons in her, why Carson didn't attempt to take her to a church or a doctor. If you think there is a demon in your child, you take her to the doctor. You don't rely on your 4th grade educated, meth-head sex offender boyfriend to take care of it. The jury found Carson guilty, and she was sentenced to life without parole. 2 of the jurors gave their reaction as to what they experienced during the trial.
The words to describe. I spent 15 years as a volunteer on volunteer fire department, riding with the ambulance, and seen horrible things, but nothing compared to this.
Very emotionally stressed, disturbed. I don't think there was a dry eye in the jury. I don't know about the audience. And I don't think I'll ever get over seeing the pictures of her.
It won't leave. It won't be over. Something that we'll remember forever.
Since the conviction, Milam has had his execution stayed twice, citing his mental competency and the bite mark evidence. He remains on death row, although no new date has been set. His mother, Shirley Milam, maintains he is innocent, saying that something happened. I just don't know what. You know, I know Blaine loved Amora very much. Some sources say that Milam got married while in prison, although it appears the two have now gone their separate ways.
Now you're just a memory to me. Now you're just a